To order. Members, please stand for the presentation of colors this morning by the Colorado Military Academy Cadet Squadron. Members, today the pledge will be led by Cadet First Lieutenant Augustus Joshua of the Valkyrie Cadet Squadron, Denver.
Please join me in reciting the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our thanks to Cadet First Lieutenant Joshua for leading the pledge, and also to Cadet Senior Master Sergeant Lanice Hansen, Cadet Master Sergeant Stephanie Neesmith, Cadet Senior Airman Samantha Lopez, Cadet Senior Airman Amara Sims from the Colorado Military Academy, Colorado Springs, Colorado. Please join me in a round of applause. Mr. Schiebel, please call the roll.
Representatives Amabile, Armagost, Bacon, Bird, Bockenfeld, Basenecker, Bottoms, Bradfield, Bradley, Brown, Catlin, Doherty, DeGraff, Degree Kennedy, Rep. Degree Kennedy,
Excused.
Dixon, Duran, English, Epps, Representative Epps,
Excused.
Evans, Frizzell, Froelich. Okay, there she is. Garcia, Gonzalez Gutierrez, Representative Gonzalez Gutierrez,
Excused.
Hamrick, she's here. Hartsook, Herod, Holtorf, Judah, she's back there. Joseph, Kip, Leader, she's here. Lindsay, Linstead, he's here. Luck, both there. Lukens, Lynch, Mabry, Marshall, Martinez. Representative Morrow is excused. McCormick. I just saw her. Representative McCormick. Oh. McLaughlin. Michelson Janae. Ortiz is excused. Parenti. Puglisi. Ricks. Representative Ricks. Is excused.
Excused.
Sharbini. He's here. Sirota. Snyder. Soper. Story. Taggart. Titone. Valdez. Representative Valdez.
Excused.
Velasco. Vigil. Is she here? Weinberg. Weissman. Wilford. Wilson. Winter. Woodrow. Young. And Madam Speaker.
Here. With 61 present, 4 excused, we do have a quorum. Representative Hartsook.
Sorry, Madam Speaker.
No problem.
Madam Speaker, we got today and tomorrow, and I don't know, maybe for our guests in the gallery, we might be able to pull it off today, but we'll give it a shot. I move that the Journal of Wednesday, February 15th of 2023 be approved as corrected by our wonderful Chief Clerk.
Members, you have heard the motion that the journal be approved as corrected by our chief clerk. All those in favor say aye.
Aye!
All those opposed, no. The ayes clearly have it. The motion is adopted. Announcements and introductions. Representative Kipp.
Thank you, everybody. Energy and Environment Committee will meet today upon adjournment over in LSBA to hear one bill. We have HB 23-1069, and I don't know if we have any of our students here, but I know CASB Day at the Capitol has a lot of students here today, so make sure you say hi to them if they try to say hi.
Thank you. Welcome to our students. Rep. Amabile.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So Business Affairs and Labor is meeting today at 1:30. We will be hearing 3 bills, 1105, 1162, and 1118. And our committee is moved So we are in the Old State Library. So please come to the Old State Library, and we will be starting exactly on time at 1:30. Thank you.
Representative Froelich.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Most of you know if you want to be good, you got to be in Englewood. And if you want to be an excellent student, you want to be in Englewood Public Schools. And so for CASB Day, we have with us Abby Husbands, Robin Gustick, and Haley Duras, and as well as our Executive Director of Opportunity Access and Inclusion, Dr. Raina Razak. So welcome.
Thank you. Representative Kipp.
I'm sorry, somebody told me I accidentally set upon adjournment instead of 1:30. Energy Environment is meeting at 1:30 in LSBA to hear HB 23-1069. Thanks.
Thank you for the correction. Rep. Snyder.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good morning, members. House Finance will be meeting upon adjournment to hear House Bill 1128 and 1129. Thank you.
Representative McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Today, Agriculture, Water, and Natural Resources Committee will be meeting upon adjournment 10 minutes after adjournment, and we'll be hearing one bill, Senate Bill 230110. And I also want to recognize the folks from St. Valley School District that are here today. So really glad to have you all.
Representative Martinez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. So we also have members from our community health center networks here. And in particular, I'd like to give a shout out to our wonderful members from Valley-wide Health Systems that are here from the San Luis Valley and the Arkansas River Valley. It is always a good day at the Capitol when we have some Southern Colorado representation, so thank you very much.
Representative Hartsook.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got some folks and visitors here from the Christian Home Education of Colorado. And in particular, in my district, I've got two folks. So one that just moved here, they're both military personnel. One's a nurse out there at Anschutz, is doing a fellowship out there for 3 years. And they're all sitting in the back of the row. So if you all would stand and we give them a warm welcome. Thank you so much.
Representative McLaughlin.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Education Committee. We get to meet today at 1:30. We have two bills up, House Bill 23-1079 and House Bill 23-1114. We look forward to seeing you there. Thank you.
Representative Sirota.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I have requested and received permission from the Majority Leader to be absent tomorrow, the 17th of February, from 11 a.m. to 2:30 p.m.
Thank you, Representative Sirota. Representative Velasco.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. And I have a lot of guests in today, a couple from Summit County, my dear friend Janess, and also we have Mountain Family Health Centers and the CEO, Ross Brooks. So let's give them a round of applause. Our communities depend on our community health centers. So thank you so much for all that you do. And I also have my cousin visiting from El Paso, Esmeralda, with her boyfriend. First time seeing snow here in Colorado. Thank you.
Representative Parenti.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. It is an honor to serve with you.
It's an honor to serve with you as well.
Colleagues, before I introduce my guests on the floor, I just wanted to take a moment of privilege to acknowledge, as the, I believe, only female member of the Veterans Caucus, our all-female color guard this morning. That was awesome. I love to see my sisters in uniform. Colleagues, I have two guests on the floor today from the great district, House District 19 and the St. Vrain Valley School District. I want to acknowledge Lauren Adams from Erie High School and Lucy Rothy from Frederick High School. Please stand up and bid them welcome. Thank you.
Representative Michelson Janae.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have a tribute, members, and I ask that it be read at length.
Mr. Schiebel, please read our tribute at length.
The Senate and House of Representatives convened in the 74th General Assembly hereby extend sincere commendations to the Colorado Wing of Civil Air Patrol. Civil Air Patrol is the congressionally chartered auxiliary of the United States Air Force. The Colorado Wing of Civil Air Patrol has served the citizens of the state since 1942, and today has nearly 900 unpaid adult volunteers and over 1,000 cadets serving the state in emergency services, cadet programs, aerospace education, cyber defense, disaster relief, and homeland security. In recent years, the Colorado Wing has served prominently in providing COVID pandemic relief and in assisting FEMA and state and local agencies during Colorado floods and wildfires with aerial photography and assistance in damage assessment. The members of the Colorado Wing have refined radar analysis and cell phone forensics to greatly enhance search and rescue of downed aircraft and lost persons across the nation. The Colorado Wing stands ready to support citizens in emergency situations, and in 2022 participated in search operations, resulting in 9 lives saved and 21 successful finds, and 2 air defense intercept and evaluation missions. Colorado cadet squadrons continue to win honors in cyber defense competitions at the national level. Cadet Colonel Jenna Jones, captain of her cyber team, is CAP's 2022 National Cadet of the Year. Cadets provide color guards for events across the state and provide cadet volunteers to support community events. CAP provides free flight instruction to qualified cadets to earn their private pilot certificates in high school. The CAP's aerospace education program touches an increasing number of students in schools across Colorado by emphasizing the aviation and space connection to science, technology, math, government, and economics. The Colorado General Assembly expresses deep gratitude to the members of the Colorado Wing of Civil Air Patrol for their service to the people of Colorado and the nation. On request of Representative Daphna Michelson Janae and Senator Kevin Van Winkle, given the 16th day of February 2023, State Capitol, Denver, Colorado.
Representative Michelson Janae.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and members, please be seated. I just wanted to take a few minutes to talk about how incredible the Civil Air Patrol is and to point out that you can become a cadet in 6th grade, so 12 years old. And I asked the question of when can you start flying, because they go there to become pilots. They start flying at 12 years old. They can fly by themselves at 15 years old in a glider. And at 16 years old, they can get their pilot's license, their commercial pilot's license. And all of this is free. This is incredible work that the Civil Air Patrol does. It is a volunteer squadron, and I'd like to welcome our guests who are on the floor. If you could please stand, guests. We have Colonel John Bushman, former Colorado Wing Commander, Lieutenant Colonel Nicole Roberts, Commander of the Colorado Military Academy Cadet Squadron, Civil Air Patrol, Cadet Captain Felicia Jimenez, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Sellers, and Cadet Lieutenant Joshua. Please welcome our guests. For your information, I am the commander of the Legislative Squadron, so you can call me Representative Lieutenant Colonel Michelson Janae from here on out, and I am honored to be able to serve in this capacity. Thank you so much, members.
Thank you, Representative Lieutenant Colonel Michelson Janae. Thank you. Representative Ricks.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to welcome some guests also from my district. I have 2 families. Jonathan Newsham and their kids, Olivia, Sophie, and Matilda are here. Also, we have Sarah Cassell with Jaden Cassell, Levi Cassell, Dalton Funderburger, and Cassidy Funderburger. Please welcome them.
Assistant Minority Leader Puglisi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have some guests today for my district. If you guys will stand and please help me welcome the future legislators that will be coming through in a few years. Thank you all for being here today and participating in our civic process. Thank you.
Seeing no further announcements and introductions, members, we are on third readings. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to proceed out of order for third reading of bills and final passage.
Seeing no objection, we will proceed out of order for third reading of bills, final passage. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to House Bill 1165.
House Bill 1165 by Representatives Amabile and McCormick, also Senators Roberts and Jaquez Lewis, concerning the authority of a Board of County Commissioners to prohibit discharge of firearms in unincorporated areas of a county.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move House Bill 1165 on third reading and final passage.
Representative Luck.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The blessings of liberty, referenced in the preambles to both our U.S. and Colorado constitutions, are cherished gifts from our Creator because we were made in His image. Our rights are not only self-evidently true, but also they are endowments to all humanity equally. The right to life means that individuals have the right to take the necessary actions for the support, development, and well-being of their own life. Moreover, it means that one has the right to self-ownership, self-sustenance, self-government, self-preservation, and self-defense. These inherently interwoven principles also intrinsically imply that the right serves as legal fence, protecting individuals from the initiation of coercion by others. That timeless truth is such, regardless of whether the infringing misconduct is instigated by a lawless individual or by the actions of an unjust government. Naturally, the correlative rule forbids individuals from initiating force against the life of another person unless acting in defense of life, liberty, and property. The policy put forth in the original statutory language and advanced under House Bill 23-1165 strips an individual of the ability to exercise these blessings of liberty. Laws which deny individuals the ability to engage in constitutionally protected conduct under the guise of public safety are a blatant violation of the rights gifted to us by God and protected under the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution and Article 2, Section 13 of the Colorado Constitution. The Second Amendment, as held by the Supreme Court of the United States in District of Columbia versus Heller, secures an individual right to keep and bear arms for self-defense, a right that has been recognized by both federal and state appeals courts, to include the right to acquire and maintain proficiency in the use of firearms. And regardless of whether the government thinks it a good idea to ban the discharge of firearms in certain locations, it cannot strip away the right to keep and bear arms, or any right of the people simply because it thinks such conduct is too dangerous. A fact acknowledged by SCOTUS in McDonald versus Chicago, quote, "The right to keep and bear arms is not the only constitutional right that has controversial public safety implications," end quote. Moreover, there is absolutely no historical or textual precedent that allows government to prohibit citizens from responsibly exercising their constitutionally protected liberties upon their own private property. This is a significant fact because under the recent holding of SCOTUS in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association, Inc. versus Bruin, any law that the government cannot demonstrate as being consistent with this country's, quote, historical tradition of firearm regulation, end quote, is not justified and is unconstitutional. Consequently, as SCOTUS rightly found, the prohibition proposed by this unprincipled legislation are arbitrary and illegitimate. In addition to the right to keep and bear arms, it is also prudent to address how House Bill 23-1165 contains clear infringements upon property rights. While not expressly stated within the trinity of rights enumerated by the nation's founding legal document, the Declaration of Independence, property is a core principle embedded within the concept of the pursuit of happiness. For the first 100 years of this nation's history, happiness was considered the summum bonum of life. lived in accordance with the laws of nature and nature's God. Our founders maintained that an individual's purpose was to seek truth in order to realize the virtues of right reason that enables one to act upon what is good and beautiful in this life. Consequently, happiness must be actively pursued through one's labor, sustained effort of rational thought, strength of character, and moral action. The culmination of these essential tenets empowered one to truly flourish, and in the words of Thomas Jefferson, to, quote, pursue their own great happiness, end quote. Appropriately, the expression pursuit of happiness encompasses the Lockean concept of property because at the core of private property rights is the ownership of one's own body, which is naturally linked with the right to life. Self-ownership is the wellspring of liberty, and outflowing that from that fundamental liberty is private property, and property leads to the principle of consent. As an extension of these rights and an actualization of the pursuit of happiness, individuals, therefore, have the right to keep, use, transfer, trade, and dispose of their own property, including firearms. And the courts have recognized this critical relationship between the Second Amendment and the exercise of that right on private property. The Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals in Ezel versus City of Chicago held that the right to possess firearms, quote, includes a corresponding right to acquire and maintain proficiency in firearm use through target practice. The right wouldn't mean much without training and practice that make it effective, end quote. In agreement with the Seventh Circuit, an intermediate appellate court in Pennsylvania built on this holding within Barris versus Stroud Township by essentially declaring that citizens have a right to train with weapons on their property. Consequently, by employing facts, logic, and reason to what we have gleaned from this discussion on the inherent nature of rights, as well as the dialogue about what the courts have recognized, one can only conclude that citizens have the right to discharge firearms at a private range or on their own property. In summation, as obvious gifts from the Creator, these aforementioned individual rights are therefore inalienable, a term that means not capable of being taken away or denied, as well as not transferable to any other. Given that our liberties are inherent to our humanity, a government cannot strip away the right to keep and bear arms simply because it has deemed conduct associated with the exercise of that right to be noisy or ambiguously, if not unreasonably, fear-inducing in others. We must not fail to remember that the Bill of Rights, including the Second Amendment, protects the liberties of all Americans. And in a truly free society, individuals will at times conduct themselves in a manner unliked by some. Hence Thomas Jefferson's preference for the tempestuous seas of liberty over the calm of despotism. The proper role of government, therefore, is to secure our rights, as well as to punish criminality, regardless of the source, and provide justice to victims. That is why I ardently oppose House Bill 23-1165, allowing counties to arbitrarily regulate the exercise of the fundamental rights of the people of Colorado. I urge this body to vote against this bill. Thank you.
Members, there is no applause on the floor. Representative Bottoms.
I would like to discuss House Bill 23-1165 again, and here's the reasons why it needs to be brought back up. The discussion of this was cut short, improperly cut short, and regardless of motives, that's not what I'm addressing. The fact that it was cut short took out about 6 more amendments that we were trying to get addressed here to try to defend the rights of the people to their Second Amendment rights. These are established within the Constitution, and they are being trodden upon strongly. And so being cut short stop the debate, stop the discussion that needed to happen, and so we want to address this again. We tried to address it again Tuesday, and in the confusion of that, and in promise of concessions and amendments and things like that, I assumed that those things were going on because I was told they were, And that also did not happen. And that was confusing to me in the process of maybe even deception on that. And so I'm looking at this again to establish the fact that 1165 is unconstitutional. It is not a healthy thing for our country. It is not a healthy thing for the individual rights of people. You are trampling on the individual rights of people by saying they cannot do this. They cannot discharge a firearm on their private property. That is also unconstitutional. All of these things are not only unconstitutional, but in my opinion, they are immoral by going against the will of the people that has been established and the Constitution which has been established at the Supreme Court level. Just recently, the Supreme Court said that the Second Amendment will stay strong, and you cannot take that apart. You cannot tear that down. And so we are revisiting this right now. And because of these issues, we did not get to continue our debate. We did not get to continue it again Tuesday. I am making a motion that we refer 1165 back to second reading for consideration of substantial amendment, and hoping that this time it will not be shut off improperly and illegally. Thank you.
Members, you have heard the motion. It is a proper motion to refer the bill back. Representative Bottoms, could I have you clarify the motion? This was to refer it back to seconds or refer it back to committee?
Yes, Ms. Speaker. This is to refer HB 23-1165 back to second reading because it was cut off for consideration and substantial amendment.
Thank you, Representative Bottoms. Members, the motion Representative Armagost.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just to second on the motion of my colleague, I just want to point out, aside from Second Amendment, not talking about Second Amendment, not talking about property rights, understanding that some people see things differently as far as that is concerned in opinions, but more so in the promises, not even promises, but the communications that we've had so far as a body. We've spoken a lot, and I've heard a lot from colleagues on both sides of the aisle about bridging the gap between the rural and urban divide. This is an important thing that we need to keep those conversations going. This is something that has been neglected for decades, as we are constantly hearing from our neighbors on the Western Slope. This is something that happens throughout our state, and we need to stop that as a body. We need to come together and have communications to better represent all aspects of our state, on the rural and on the urban end, and to push bills without these open communications and bringing more voices to the table. We are sticking it to our people in the rural communities. We are holding up our people in the urban communities, and we are destroying that bridge that we are so diligently trying to create. So in speaking in the affirmation and support of my colleague's motion, I ask that we have more discussions on bills like this as a body to help bridge that gap that we have between the urban and rural communities, and also taking care of our state rather than our party, the letter we represent, any personal agenda or narrative, taking care of our state as a whole, our rural and our urban members and constituents. Your constituents are not only the people that voted for you. Your constituents are the people that you represent in your district. So bringing these communications, these talks, bringing those voices to the table and giving them that voice to be able to speak for themselves, not just hearing one side of an argument and pushing that side through this body. So I am in support of this motion, and I would please encourage everyone in this body to consider this and bring these communications back to the table. Thank you.
Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of this motion to refer 1165. Today we defend the high ideals for which George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and countless others fought and died, as we were reminded this morning. The Second Amendment is not a trivial part of our Constitution because it defends, defines, and secures the others. These rights are about the preservation and securing of our individual liberty. I'm reminded as a George Washington quote from my time as a cadet. The general is sorry to be informed that the foolish and wicked practice of profane cursing and swearing, a vice heretofore little known to an American army, is growing into fashion. He hopes that the officers will, by their example as well as influence, endeavor to check it, and both they and the men will reflect that we can have little hope of the blessing of heaven on our arms if we continue to insult it by our impiety and folly. Ladies and gentlemen, this is folly. This bill is folly. I'd like to remind everyone in here that you represent all of Colorado. Your role is Colorado representative, not representative to the well-heeled California transplants of the nanny state of Boulder. This is all of Colorado.
Representative DeGraff?
Yes, ma'am.
I will ask you to be respectful in your reference to members of the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We're worried about gun crime, and that's fine. But we have a criminal prosecution system that does not prosecute criminals. The agents that we have release criminals daily. They let them go. We don't prosecute them. And then we say, we will solve violence by taking the means of self-defense out of the hands of law-abiding citizens. The only people that are inclined to follow gun laws are the people that are inclined to follow laws. Those are the law-abiding citizens. And when you remove and when you take the means of self-defense away from them, you don't reduce crime, you just increase the number of targets. So by turning law-abiding citizen gun owners into criminals, and then we place them at the mercy of actual criminals, 1165 turns our law-abiding citizens into criminals and makes them as targets. Ladies and gentlemen, shall not be infringed is very clear. Shall not be infringed. It can't get any more clear than that. What 1165 is it is infringing. It is infringing on property rights. It is infringing on Second Amendment rights. It is infringing on First Amendment rights. And those inform all the others. And the Second Amendment protects all the others. Shall not be infringed seems pretty clear. Infringements must be excised from the law of the United States Bill of Rights. Amendment 2, a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, shall not be infringed. And that doesn't specify whether it's the regulated militia or the unregulated militia, which consists of all able-bodied males between 18 and 45. The Colorado Bill of Rights, Article 2, Section 13, the right to bear arms. So this is in the Colorado Bill of Rights. So not only the United States Constitution, to which you took an oath to support and defend, not usurp and upend, it's the Colorado Bill of Rights that is in line with the United States. Article 2, Section 13, the right to bear arms, a right of no person to keep and bear arms in defense of his home, person, and property, or in the aid of a civil power when thereto legally summoned, shall be called into question, but nothing herein shall be construed to justify the practice of carrying concealed weapons. So the right to bear arms, we had to make an amendment to this bill to not have it intentionally usurp the Colorado Constitution and the United States Constitution. Both documents, both concepts, both that everybody in this body took an oath to support and defend. We had to get an amendment for that. And it was a reluctantly given amendment at that. So what that tells the citizens of Colorado and why they're upset about this bill, the reason that they're upset about this bill is because they don't trust this body. And the reason that they would not trust this body is because they can't trust this body. Because these are things that have been put into law to intentionally do it, just like the homestead. It wasn't just occupied houses, it was trailers. That would immediately it would immediately half, if not more, the number of dwellings that would be counted in a given area. When we tried to take that out, saying that it was that it would be more in line with the original definition, we were denied the ability to take that out, which tells me that was part of the original design. The original design is to legislatively bully a group of people into giving up, losing their constitutional rights. These are people that have moved into unincorporated areas. They moved into unincorporated areas for unincorporated reasons. And then somebody else moves into an unincorporated reason, and then they say, "Oh, we want everything like the incorporated reasons." Well, the obvious solution is to not move there. It's like the standard practice of moving near an airport and then complaining about jet noise. It is absolutely folly, and it just rewards legislative bullying. This bill violates due process in favor of well-heeled legislative bullies. Violating due process is no excuse for violating the Second Amendment. Amendment 5, no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of the law. This is not due process of the law. This is making a law in retrospect to circumvent the rights that we are sworn to uphold and defend. Now, looking about at my colleagues, I can see most of you don't care about that, but that's unfortunate. You still took an
Representative
oath.
DeGraff,
Yes,
please
ma'am.
do not impugn the motives of others.
Yes, ma'am, I apologize.
Thank you. Please
Article
state
2.
the motion before us.
Due process of the law. No person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of the law. Your second amendments are key to preserving all of the others. We are either condemned to learn from history or relive it. I would like to speak from history. It is clear that our founders felt that the right to keep and bear arms was essential for not only protecting our lives and property, but our republic itself. As to the current web of laws, as Alexis de Tocqueville observed, after having thus successfully taken each member of the community in its powerful grasp and fashioned him at will, the government then extends its arm over the whole of the community. It covers the surface of the society with a network of small, complicated rules, minute and uniform, through which the most original minds and the most energetic characters cannot penetrate. To rise above the crowd, the will of man is not shattered but softened, bent, guided. Men seldom forced by it to act, but they are constantly restrained from acting. Such a power does not destroy, but it prevents existence. It does not tyrannize, but it compresses.
Representative
enervates.
DeGraff,
Yes,
you have
ma'am.
2 minutes remaining.
Thank you. The current conglomeration, I think, is irrelevant. Till each nation is reduced to nothing better than a flock of timid and industrious animals of which the government is shepherd. The current conglomeration of laws is reminiscent of Stalin's head of secret police. Show me the man, I'll show you the crime. From the United States Bill of Rights, Amendment 2, a well-regulated militia, we already covered that, shall not be infringed is pretty clear. All persons have certain essential and inalienable rights, among which may be reckoned the right of enjoying and defending their lives, liberty of acquiring, possessing, protecting property, and seeking and obtaining their safety and happiness. For the individual to defend, protect, and ensure the safety of their person and property is considered essential and inalienable. In order to do those things, you must practice. Practicing with a tool of self-defense takes practice, and that practice makes some noise, and that is unfortunate, but it is part of our life. It is troubling that our current legislation is a de facto declaration of what our Constitution declares inalienable rights are not viewed as such. The people shall be secure in their persons, papers, homes, and effects, and that applies to this bill as well. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot here to Bill 1165. And I think we're just as a whole looking at this and saying, well, I think this will make us safer. This will not make us safer. This will make us more vulnerable. This will not only make us more vulnerable, it will degrade our rights. It will erode our constitutional rights. In eroding our constitutional rights, we put the entirety of the experiment of our nation at risk. I urge you to vote yes on a continuance of 1165 so we can continue
Representative
to debate these
DeGraff, your
things.
time has
Thank you, Madam
concluded.
Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Winter.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good morning, everybody. Since we last talked about this bill, I've received numerous emails and phone calls from constituents in my district asking us to continue the discussion on this bill. So I stand here in support of this amendment. When I took this job on, I realized that, especially the House reps, that's the closest to the people. The way the founders set up our government, we were supposed to be the closest to the people. That way we could raise and talk about the concerns of the people in our district. And like I said, the conversations and the communications that have been given to me or the constituents of House District 47 don't believe that we've discussed this bill enough. And that's why I stand here today. Rural Colorado, it's a great place to live. I'm going to be honest, it's a really good place to live. And the people in rural Colorado, as I traveled this district, one of the things that I championed my campaign on is I was going to stand for private property rights. That's very important to the people of rural Colorado, because we all know that the founding fathers, when they created this nation, they knew that the cornerstone of freedom was private property. That's what made this country different than anywhere else in the world. And the people in rural Colorado feel like things like this are an attack on their private property rights, when they could be told what they could do with their property. And we know that we've heard that it isn't meant to do that, and it's just a few small areas, but they look at this as a first step bill. It's that today, and then what is it tomorrow? The feeling of the constituents in my district are, pass the laws and do what you have to control your lives in your areas, but please, let us do the things that we want to do in our area. We'll pitch in, we'll do our part in rural Colorado, but kind of leave us alone. Let us do our own thing. Let us live our lives. I appreciate that from those people. They're good, hardworking, salt-of-the-earth people that just want to have the ability to do what they want on their own property. And then they talk about the Second Amendment, which is also an important thing in my district. My district is a very strong supporter of the Second Amendment. And they believe the Second Amendment was what allows this nation to be such a great and free nation. It creates that check and balance of the people and the government. And it's also a way for them to protect their lives, protect their families, protect their livestock. So I urge you, let's please keep going and let's keep having this discussion. On behalf of the constituents of House District 47, which are just as important as any other constituent that you represent in this great chamber, let us please continue to have this discussion. Let me please continue to represent the constituents of House District 47. So thank you for your consideration, and I urge an aye vote.
Representative Bradley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I support this motion to send it back to seconds because I wasn't able to discuss the following. As a woman whose stature puts me at risk against a lot of my male counterparts, I have a Second Amendment right to bear arms. As a responsible gun owner, I should practice shooting a gun. When we owned over 35 acres and a cabin in Florissant, Colorado, we would target shoot. We would skeet shoot. We would sight in our rifles. This is where we taught our 4 boys to be responsible gun owners. The Second Amendment is to mitigate the imbalance of force. Here are some examples of why this is so important. Each of the following women would have been a victim if not for their right to bear arms. Women have long availed themselves of the right to keep and bear arms in defense of life, liberty, and property, from Harriet Tubman, the famed conductor of the Underground Railroad, who was known to carry loaded pistols, to Mary Stagecoach Mary Fields, the first black woman to be a mail carrier, who notoriously kept a .38 revolver in her apron to fend off bandits and wild animals alike. Tubman and Fields haven't been alone. Almost every major study on the issue has found that Americans use their firearms in self-defense between 500,000 and 3 million times annually, according to the most recent report on the subject by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The following examples represent only a small portion of the news stories on defensive gun use that was found in March 2022. You may implore more by using the Heritage Foundation's Interactive Defense Gun Use Database. March 1st, Atlanta. 5 teens, at least 2 armed, tried to carjack a woman as she sat in her vehicle, police said. The woman drew her own gun and exchanged fire with the would-be carjackers who fled. Although she was injured, her car was not stolen. Police said they arrested the teens just hours later after a police chase in which they crashed a car stolen during a second carjacking. March 4th, Longview, Texas. A woman armed with a rifle shot and wounded a man who forced his way inside her home, police said. The woman had told the man, who neighbors say had a history of criminally trespassing in area homes, to get off her porch. But he refused and tried to smash in her sliding glass door with his fist, according to police, who arrested the wounded man. The county sheriff praised the woman's actions as an excellent example of the importance of our Second Amendment. March 5th, North Carolina, police said a woman's estranged husband showed up at the residence where she was staying, forced his way inside and threatened her and the male homeowner. During the altercation, the homeowner retrieved a firearm from a bedroom and shot the intruder in self-defense before running to a neighbor's home to call 911. Police charged the wounded husband with multiple crimes. March 9th, Nashville, Tennessee. After her boyfriend physically assaulted her earlier in the day, a woman returned to their shared home to gather her belongings and retrieve her 3 young children, police said. A female friend accompanied her for support. When they arrived, the boyfriend argued with the woman, then assaulted her again. She saw that he was armed, so she drew her own gun and exchanged fire with him in self-defense. The woman, her friend, and the boyfriend were all injured, but the 3 children weren't harmed, police said. The boyfriend faces several felony charges, including being a felon and an unlawful possession of a firearm. March 10th, Dayton, Ohio. A woman's ex-boyfriend ignored a protective order against him, scaled the roof of her home in the middle of the night, and tried to climb through her bedroom window, police said. When the woman heard the intruder, she grabbed a firearm to protect herself and her daughter and shot the man in the arm as he descended into her bedroom. She told police she realized it was her ex-boyfriend as he ran from the house. He was arrested later that day after calling paramedics for his gunshot wound and faces several criminal charges. March 16th, Reading, Pennsylvania. A woman and her boyfriend were about to get into their car at a local park when a man approached them and fired 2 rounds, police said. The woman drew her own gun and shot back, giving her wounded boyfriend time to take cover behind the car. Police later arrested their assailant and charged him with attempted homicide and unlawfully possessing a gun as a felon. March 22nd, Orlando, Florida. A female veteran working as an Uber driver arrived at a customer's pickup location and saw him physically assaulting his girlfriend, police said. The driver decided to give them a ride despite the man's violent actions because she didn't want to leave the girlfriend alone with her assailant. When the couple got back into the car, the man passed out drunk in the back seat while the Uber driver spoke with the girlfriend. When the man woke up and assaulted both his girlfriend and the female driver, police said the driver stopped the car and demanded that he get out. The driver shot and wounded the man after he shoved his girlfriend to the ground and advanced on the driver in a threatening manner. March 23rd, Paradise, Nevada. A woman was with her ex-boyfriend and 3 children when an ex-boyfriend broke into their home, police said. The woman armed herself and called 911, and the ex-boyfriend left. However, he returned a short time later armed with his own gun, which he pointed at the current boyfriend's head. The woman fired 1 shot, striking him in the head and killing him, police said. No one else was harmed. March 24th, Lansing, Michigan. When a man with 2 prior convictions for domestic violence began assaulting a woman inside her home, police said, her son came to her defense, shooting and wounding her attacker. Police arrested him in a nearby hospital. The woman was treated with non-threatening injuries. Some gun control advocates like to claim that the Second Amendment was written by and for men, and that leaves it to women to suffer as victims of gun violence. But these claims ignore the countless cases, such as the ones above, where the right to keep and bear arms was used by women or for the sake of protecting women, often from male aggressors against whom an unarmed woman would have been directly helpless. When we take away the right to practice firearms, we take away being responsible gun owners and the right for women to be able to protect themselves. Thank you.
Representative members and guests in the gallery, I will remind you, no applause on 3rd readings. Representative Weinberg.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good morning, everybody. Just very simply enough, the biggest respect you can give to a super minority, which is just 19 of us out of 65, is the way of conversation. I would rise in support of this motion and ask you and plead with you to continue to listen to us. We don't feel like we've had enough time to address this issue. We feel we've been shut down on it. And if you can do anything with respect to a super minority in this body, is give us time to speak and debate. So I rise in support. I ask you to do the same. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Luck.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also rise in support of this motion. There are a lot of new members in this building, and is a lot of learning that has to take place as relates to what goes on right here at this podium. There was some confusion on the original day, on Monday, when we were debating this bill that truncated it. That conversation was reopened on Tuesday, but as a result of miscommunications on our side of the aisle, there was not the full and robust conversation that otherwise would have been had. And so we would like the grace from the majority to go back and have this conversation to the fullness. We represent very passionate individuals around this topic. They have a set of amendments that they would like us to propose to this body. And so humbly and graciously, we ask for the opportunity to go back and to rehab this conversation. Thank you.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also support this motion. I would like to remind you that when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, this bill goes against that. This bill allows for certain groups, higher class privileged groups, to decide what their neighbors can and can't do on their property. For that reason, we need to have more discussions about this bill. Thank you.
Representative DeGraff, you have already spoken to the motion.
Don't I get two?
Sorry, forgive me. Representative DeGraff, you did exhaust your 10 minutes to speak to the motion. Representative Bottoms.
Again, I would like you to consider this motion. This is something that affects a lot more than just the people in Metro Denver. There are people all over the state that have private property that have been discharging their firearms on private property for as long as there have been firearms in Colorado. This is a direct attack against those people, that somehow that there's all these people that are killed on their own private property, or all this mayhem done on their own private property, is not debatable. It's silly. The other side of this is when this bill was originally brought forward, two small groups of people in two counties said this was an issue. What about all the other dozens and dozens of counties that this has never been an issue ever? This needs to be reconsidered. This needs to be brought back into seconds. And again, to say this was shut down illegally. This was shut down improperly. And we need to have the ability to have this debate. There was still much more that we needed to discuss from all kinds of layers of the Second Amendment. This isn't a tax bill. This is the Second Amendment of our Constitution. And we need to be able to have this motion accepted so that we can bring it back. Then everybody has the right, both sides of the aisle has the right to discuss whatever they want to discuss with this, against, for, or whatever. We need to have this to be brought back to seconds so that we can have this amendment, this motion addressed again. Thank you.
Representative Amabile.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And we did have a robust debate. We did open up the debate for 2 days. And I would urge a no vote on this motion. Thank you.
Representative Catlin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's an honor to serve with you.
And an honor to serve with you.
Thank you. Members, this is one of those times where we might want to take our time and take a look at this. There are folks out in rural Colorado that are really panicked about what's being contemplated. If we, their representatives, take the time to discuss it with one another, we might flesh out some ideas that people have not thought about. Sometimes when bills come to the floor, some of us don't really pay a lot of attention to them because they don't affect our district, or they're not within your wheelhouse or my wheelhouse. But this is one of those that will influence probably the majority, and I mean a vast majority of people in the state of Colorado. People that want to use their weapons, they want to practice, they want to do those kind of things, they come to my district, they come to the county to do those things. Not that they just drive onto a piece of property and go to shooting. They come, they ask permission, they do all of the things that a good hunter will do. And if this were to pass, there's a good opportunity that some of those kids may not learn how to do that. I don't want to make things worse. I want to make things better. This is a bill that needs more conversation. It needs more debate, if more than just conversation. We need to talk to one another about what this will do in the state of Colorado. I would urge you to vote yes on the motion to take us back to seconds.
Representative Soper.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I also rise in support of the motion. Of all the bills that we've heard so far this year, I've received the most emails and correspondence and telephone calls on this particular bill. As a matter of fact, in just the last 48 hours alone, that's exceeded well over 100 correspondents to my office. And so I sat down and decided to start looking at the math and why it was important to go back to second reading and have a little bit longer conversation. We're looking at 35 homes per square mile. That would equal about 18 acres per home. 18 acres is a lot of land, and that's enough land to be able to engage in sports shooting, recreational shooting, to hone in on your skills, to make sure that when you're using your Second Amendment rights, that you're accurate in doing so. That's what we expect. A well-trained militia. You need to be able to hone in on those skills. But then I look at this bill as not just being about the Second Amendment and Colorado's version of the Second Amendment, which is in our state constitution as well, but I look at this as a private property rights issue. And when someone moves next to, for example, a farm or an airstrip, and they immediately complain about the noise of the airplanes or the smell or the noise coming from the farm, that's the same issue that we heard on second reading that we heard in committee, but I don't think we really tinkered that out as much as we should have. There is a real concern that the second landowner moving in who then complains about the noise, for example, the noise of shooting firearms, well, do they have a right to immediately make a beeline to the county commission to get a special ruling to say that that otherwise lawful activity cannot occur on that landowner's property? So this is really about private property rights owners, land use, the ability to engage in an otherwise lawful activity on your own property and in a safe manner. So the ability to flesh out these arguments that I do not feel were fully extracted during second reading is important, and that's why I stand here in support of the motion and would like to see this go back to second reading. Thank you.
Representative Taggart.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's an honor to serve with you.
And an honor to serve with you.
I rise in favor of this motion as well, and I'll reiterate a couple of things I said before. First, I too have received at this point over 1,500 communications on this particular bill alone of people very, very concerned about this bill. And secondly, I will reiterate, this bill was rushed, not only from our discussion in second reading, but prior to that. Because when I talked to our county commissioner, one of our county commissioners, his statement back to me was, Rick, you've got to tell me what's going on with this bill because we've not heard of it yet. And secondly, when I reviewed it with him, he said, we have all the tools in the toolbox today to deal with that. We do not need this bill. Thank you very much.
Representative Hartsook.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I too rise in support for this amendment. As I stated earlier, law enforcement has more than enough laws on the books to do its job. The more that we as a legislative body add to that stack of laws, the more they have to wade through, the more they have to look at to ensure. It makes their job more difficult. There's multiple venues in this law to look at, and it needs to go back for further discussion. I would highly encourage you to vote yes on this amendment. Thank you.
And to clarify, Representative Hartsook, it was a motion to send it back to seconds, if you would like to clarify.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My mistake. Yes, I urge you to vote yes on the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Frizzell.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is an honor to serve with you.
And an honor to serve with you.
I also rise in favor of this motion. You know, the erosion of our basic rights in this country is a slippery slope. And I, too, have received countless communications from my constituents in Castle Rock who are very, very concerned about the erosion of their constitutional rights and the erosion of local control. Representatives, we have a responsibility to make sure that we, as we sit under this beautiful gold dome, look out for all the citizens of the state of Colorado. We have to take our individual district hat off and look at what is best for the citizens of Colorado and what they're asking for. Again, I respectfully ask for your aye vote on this motion.
Representative Bradfield.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I stand here, ask for an aye vote on this motion. I, too, have received multiple emails, text messages from constituents who are concerned about their rights.
Representative Evans.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, I debated coming down here. I was given a piece of advice before I was even sworn in that said, Gabe, go to the well if it's something that you're passionate about and if it's something that you know about. And so I sat in my chair deciding, you know what, am I going to go down to the well? And I decided, you know what, on behalf of the constituents that sent me here to represent them, because I also have received hundreds of communications from my district on this topic, I decided this is something that I need to come and I need to speak about. We've heard about the Second Amendment, and that's something that I stand for and I support. We've heard about private property, and again, that's something that we must all stand for and support. And so I just wanted to provide a personal reflection about how those two things impact me and impact my district. I think you all know that I have a law enforcement background. One of the positions that I was privileged to hold was as a law enforcement firearms instructor. So I actually taught other cops about firearms. And then after I transitioned out of law enforcement, I work now as a certified firearms instructor. Just last year, I taught somewhere between 200 and 300 students about safe firearm usage, safe firearm storage, safe firearm handling. And one of the things that we always talk about whenever we're teaching our students about how to be safe and responsible firearms owners is that perfect practice makes perfect. And that if you are going to be a responsible firearm owner, you have to be familiar with that. You have to practice with it. And that is why I rise in support of this motion, because I think there are additional conversations that we have not had yet that revolve around how can we empower our citizens to safely and responsibly, in a cost-efficient manner, practice and use their Second Amendment rights. We all know that cost of living is affecting our community these days. Well, some folks aren't going to be able to afford the gas to get to a shooting range. Some people aren't going to be able to afford the time that it takes to drive to that shooting range, not to mention the actual range fees themselves. But if you happen to have a property that's safe and set up to lawfully and responsibly practice your Second Amendment right, you should have that right to do so on your private property. And so I think that we need to have that conversation about, does this disproportionately impact those lower income folks that may not have the resources and the access to a shooting range? we need to talk about the safety aspect here, as we've heard before. Folks who don't get the opportunity to practice may not be as proficient as they would like to be. And so by allowing them to practice on their private property, we're actually promoting safer communities and safer, more responsible firearm ownership. And finally, as we've heard, existing law already has numerous mechanisms by which any sort of issues can be regulated. There's already noise ordinances in effect. You all know that I worked in code enforcement. I investigated noise complaints for a profession. We already have rules about projectiles leaving your property and going onto somebody else's property. There's plenty of existing tools that we can use in order to ensure that our citizens have the ability to safely, responsibly exercise their constitutional rights on their own property. And so I rise in support of this amendment of this motion, because I believe that we need to have those discussions, and that to curtail the discussion would abridge and infringe upon the Second Amendment and upon private property. Thank you.
Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I know we're having a vigorous discussion this morning on third readings. There are many things that we are going to have to discuss, and we may or may not agree as a body. In this particular situation, I'm concerned about the constitutionality and the constitutional question with respect to Second Amendment rights and with respect to county governance based on the vote of county commissioners to infringe upon those Second Amendment rights. That is the real issue here. Should the authority for county government to prohibit firearms discharge? Well, I say no. And the last point I'm going to make here is there was a time in rural Colorado, and this time could come back, where you would go and hunt for rabbits so you could eat a meal. I've seen this in my lifetime. For those of you that haven't eaten rabbit, it's actually pretty good. I have. But if I'm in a situation where now, and I know in my home county this would never happen. It would never happen. But in any county where you have low-income individuals who maybe come as immigrants to this country, who need to shoot a rabbit to eat a meal, this particular piece of legislation, if that county so authorized the prohibition of the firearm discharge, it potentially would not let them do that without breaking laws and ordinances of that county. And I have issue with that. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Assistant Minority Leader Puglisi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My concern revolves around the ability of county commissioners, as a former county commissioner, to really have some robust conversations around this issue and engage with their sheriffs. I don't know that the time has really been put into that. And when I talked to county commissioners, they said that they did not feel like they had been engaged at the level that they needed to. So thank you.
Representative Luck.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So I just wanted to provide context to the member from Delta's remarks related to 18 acres. It's sometimes hard to get our minds around how large of a parcel of land that is. And so for context, anyone who has been to Washington, D.C. and has walked the White House grounds, the fenced area of the White House grounds encapsulates 18 acres. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about restrictions under this bill. And so if you think that that kind of acreage could not be properly constructed in order to provide safety for shooting, I would just say that I disagree with you. Thank you.
Minority Leader Lynch.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, on the other side of the aisle, you've heard us unanimously speak about how important this issue is. We've only just begun the debates on this year, and I think a little bit of procedure and figuring out how things are going since we have so many new members caused us to be in a position where we feel like we did not get all of the debate done that needs to be done on this, and so I would urge a yes vote. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, members, the motion before us is to send House Bill 1165 to second readings. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 20 aye, 44 no, and 1 excused, the motion is lost. We are back to the overlying motion, the adoption of House Bill 1165. Representative Bockenfeld. Representative Bockenfeld?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's an honor to serve with you.
And an honor to serve with you.
If I may yield to, I would like to come back, but if I may yield to one of my colleagues at this time, I would graciously like to do so.
Thank you. Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is a privilege to serve with you.
And a privilege to serve with you.
Thank you. I would like to make a motion to move 1165 to the Committee of the Judiciary.
This is a proper motion. Members, the motion before us is to send House Bill 1165 to the Committee on Judiciary. Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as my colleague just, and we've tried to emphasize, we have not vetted this piece of legislation constitutionally. On the face of it, it is wholly unconstitutional. And we should at least have, and as such, a piece of legislation like this is going to become embroiled in judicial proceedings, in lawsuits. Those lawsuits are not only expensive for our citizens, they're draining on our economy, and they're draining from this body directly. We can have these discussions, but they have to be allowed to have these. It's ironic that we have to be allowed to have these discussions. In that the emphasis that we have enough laws. We have enough laws already in place for county commissions to deal with this issue. So why is it at this body? I'm reminded of talking to the tax folks here last week, and they informed me how we have a backlog of tax code in the tax system that they don't even know how to implement for this year. They don't know how to implement them because this body creates tax legislation at a rate that outpaces the Department of Revenue's ability to interpret or figure out how to enforce that legislation. So now they're behind.
Representative DeGraff, I do want to give you leeway, but we are focused on the motion at the moment.
Yes, ma'am. I am focused on that because we are adding law. We are adding law where there's no law that needs to be added. The county commissioners have said that they have enough tools in their toolbox to deal with this. There are ways for unincorporated places where this is an issue to become incorporated. Those are processes. What is not a legitimate process is to run to this legislature, although it is becoming more of an accepted practice. It is not a legitimate process to come to this legislature and ask for us to intervene in every single problem. This is an ideological imposition, and we have not vetted it with law enforcement. We have not vetted it with the county commissioners. We have not listened to the voices of all of our citizens, and we have certainly not listened to the Constitution or history. Our founders studied the rise and fall of civilizations and empires of the Mediterranean and Middle East, and later the emergent civilizations of Europe. There is a view, often held by members in this body, that from an ignorance of history, that our founding documents were for white men and by white men. But they belie the words of Frederick Douglass, who recognized in the words that all men were created equal, that were very intentionally put in there by Thomas Jefferson, that these were the seeds of slavery's demise. And Frederick Douglass also recognized that there are 3 boxes on which our liberty is founded. We have the ballot box, we have the jury box, and we have the cartridge box. Tyrants will typically remove the cartridge box in order to remove the jury box, in order to remove the ballot box. To this, with the boxes, is often, and I would add it here, the soapbox, and that's what we're doing today. If we want to look at the history, Samuel Adams explained the Constitution should never be construed to authorize Congress to infringe the just liberty of the press, the right of the conscience, or to prevent the people of the United States who are peaceable citizens from keeping their own arms. This law, contrary to Samuel Adams, is a complete imposition on the right of peaceable citizens to bear arms, to keep and bear arms, to practice and be responsible. It will do absolutely nothing for those who don't follow the law. You're only aiding the people who don't follow the law and creating more crime. Why a citizen needs to be armed is perhaps best answered by George Mason in 1788, that to disarm the people was the best and most effectual way to enslave them, whether that is by government or criminal cartels, as we see from our neighbors to the south. The purpose of disarmament, the purpose of infringement, is to subjugate. The purpose of infringement is subjugation and enslavement, whether it's to a body, a legislative body that decides that it's going to regulate each and everybody down to your last breath. The purpose is subjugation. James Madison wrote in the Federalist 46 that the advantage of being armed, for which Americans possess over a people of almost every other nation, forms a barrier against the enterprises of ambition, of government, more insurmountable than any which a simple government of any form can admit of. Continuing to note that there are several kingdoms of Europe that are afraid to trust the people with arms. The reason a government would not trust the citizens with arms is because their intent is to do something that they know the citizens are not going to be happy with, that they know are going to infringe on their rights. Whether that's your intention or not here today, that's the path that every single one of these laws creates. Each infringement is a step towards subjugation of your citizens. And the citizens aren't happy about it. I'll refer to a quote that I found recently. Some of you don't like. I don't know why. It's by a founder of the Black Panthers. And originally I probably would have said, maybe that guy wasn't in line with our Constitution. But the more I look at his words, the more I see he was in line with our Constitution because the rights denied to him were not coming back by either the jury box, the ballot box. And so he was left with the cartridge box. And now we celebrate the achievement of individuals like Huey Newton, a founder of the Black Panthers. Any unarmed people are slaves or are subject to slavery at any given moment. If the guns are taken out of the hands of the people and only the pigs have guns, then it's off to the concentration camps, the gas chambers, or whatever the fascists in America come up with. One of the democratic rights of the United States, the Second Amendment to the Constitution, gives the people the right to bear arms. However, there is a greater right, the right of human dignity, that gives all men the right to defend themselves. It's important to note that he did not call America fascist. He called the people that would infringe on the rights to keep and bear arms, the rights to neutralize the imbalance of power between the subjector and the subjugated, between the tyrant and the tyrannized. It's the tyrant to whom he referred as fascist.
Representative DeGraff, please stay focused on the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Frederick Douglass cited the three boxes: the jury box, the ballot box, and the cartridge box. And again, we're doing the soapbox here today, and it's important. Frederick Douglass, like Huey Newton, recognized that every time this is done through history, we can look at it through history. The link between disarmament and infringement and subjugation should be axiomatic. It is one to the other. You might not see that in this one, but each individual step is a step in that direction. These areas, again, could have gone through community governance, but they did not.
Representative DeGraff, you have 1 minute and 20 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. They did not. They could have gone through community governance. They could have appealed to the citizens. They could have gone to their neighbors and said, hey, maybe we could do this a little bit different. They did not. They rushed to the legislature. A piece of legislation was rushed through. It's not considered. It is not constitutional. And it creates yet another incredibly dangerous precedent. So I think at least a step, if we're not going to be willing to talk about it, would be to refer this to the Committee of the Judiciary and begin to look at least some of the challenges that we can expect before we expend more of the citizens' money on defending a lawsuit that we could have prevented if this was a deliberative body instead of a rubber stamp body. So I ask you to vote yes on referring this to the Committee of the Judiciary.
Representative Luck.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In my opening statement, I referenced the recent Bruin decision. That decision brought a great deal of clarity and strength to the jurisprudence around the Second Amendment. As such, I rise in support of sending this bill back to the Committee of the Judiciary so as to more thoroughly vet those particular concerns that would be raised under the most recent Supreme Court case on this topic. Thank you.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to reiterate what was discussed in committee. There was only one county commissioner that spoke in favor of this bill, and he stated that they could not enforce the current laws, let alone an additional law. So how would this bill help anything? This bill is unenforceable. Not a single sheriff in any county showed up to testify in favor of this. This bill has issues with 2A and private property rights. So it would only make sense to send it back to judiciary and get a deeper discussion on how that's going to work. As was mentioned earlier, if a county commissioner admits that he can't enforce the current laws around this particular situation, then how do we expect any county to enforce a law like this? So I rise in support of this motion. I ask for a yes vote. Thank you.
Representative Bottoms.
I also urge a yes vote on this motion to send it back to the judiciary. Some of these things have already been discussed, but we've got conflicting laws that are from the state level and from the federal level in reaction to the Second Amendment that are conflicting with all of this stuff as we are setting down laws within this House. We are breaking federal laws and we are breaking state laws. So what we're trying to do is say, let's bring it back to the judiciary because that's where the argument needs to come back to. We need to discuss this on a legal basis. We need to vet this out on a legal basis. Bruin, what we're doing in this law goes against what Bruin decided in New York. What we're doing in this law goes against 7-8 months ago when the Supreme Court established that individuals have the right to carry in public places. That's Supreme Court ruling. Well, now we're saying you can carry in a public place, but not a public place that happens to be your property. That's 2 steps back, not just 1. That's 2 steps degraded from the concept of this public property that is yours. This is your public property, and we're saying we're not going to allow you to carry on your property, although if you step off of your property, you can now carry in public. We cannot discharge our own firearms that we're allowed to carry in public on our own property. There's so many legal problems with this, and this entire bill will be shut down legally in the long run. We know that because all of the Supreme Court issues that have been decided right now are going directly against not just the Second Amendment rights, which are the big ones, but it goes against personal property rights. So to bring this to the floor without coming back to the judiciary and saying, we need to discuss this again. We are way off base legally. We are breaking all kinds of laws. Why would we not bring that back to the judiciary? This is what the heart of this motion is why would we not do what we would consider due diligence in any other setting? Why would we not do due diligence to say, let's let the judiciary make another run at this so at least when it gets completely destroyed by the Supreme Court, that the judiciary said, hey, we gave it 2 good runs. We tried, but it just still got passed into the floor so that we can discuss it again and try to figure out how illegal this law is. Judiciary, I think it would be very prudent for you to try to get this back to your committee and try to get some more statements on record. At least if you're going to try to vote this in later, at least you got a little bit of cover maybe when this gets splashed all over the media nationwide that another Colorado law got beat down by the Supreme Court because of its invalid stances on every single part of this bill. Judiciary, it might consider bringing this back. To me, at this particular point, it's your only hope at trying to bring some kind of sanity back to this conversation on our rights that have been already infringed upon in so many ways. But this one really to me is beyond the pale. It makes no sense why we would do this. So I strongly stand in favor of this motion that we bring this back to the judiciary, the Judiciary Committee.
Representative DeGraff, you have 10 seconds remaining. Oh, my apologies. You can speak as many times as you want, but there is a limit on the amount of time that you can speak.
I will speak quickly.
You have 10 seconds. Thank you, Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Virtue preening is not a good reason for this. There's no the opposition has made no constitutional argument in favor. I recommend referring this to the judiciary to continue the discussion.
Your time is concluded.
Thank you.
Representative Amabile.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Again, I urge a no vote on this motion. We did have a robust debate in the committee. We heard from a lot of witnesses, and we had a robust debate on the floor twice. We heard a lot of amendments. We accepted several amendments, and I would urge a no vote. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is sending House Bill 1165 to Judiciary Committee. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Herod is excused. Please close the machine. With 20 aye, 42 no, and 3 excused, the motion to return House Bill 1165 to Judiciary is lost. Representative Bockenfeld, to the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's a pleasure to be back. Members, I rise in opposition to this bill, House Bill 23-1165. As has been previously mentioned, the bill is unnecessary. I served as a county commissioner for 12 years. In the county that I served in, we represented districts, and my district was the rural, unincorporated area of the county. We already have laws on the books to deal with these issues. If your concern is about safety, we have laws on the books. I've utilized them in the past in my district. If your concern is about noise, we have laws on the books, because I also had to utilize them in my district. I ask you this: why did the County Sheriff's Association not take a support or oppose position on this bill? Because it's unnecessary. And they know it's unnecessary because we already have laws on the books to deal with this issue. Now, my understanding is through testimony that there's one county that expressed the need for this bill. One county should not be inflicting their personal issue upon the whole state. Now, you may ask, why should you be concerned? Because it creates, you may be asking me, why should you be concerned if the county government is given this new level of authority? Because it creates a great deal of confusion with constituents. We have many split communities by county line in this state. I represent a district that has at least, I represent a district today that has at least 2 split communities. The I-70 corridor, Adams to the north, Arapahoe to the south, Elbert County to the east, and there's Douglas County to the west. And when these counties go out and create these types of laws, it creates a great deal of confusion. And we've done it already to my district. Now, prior to many of you being here, we had a vigorous debate a few years ago about fireworks. Should we give the counties the ability to ban and possess fireworks? Well, let me tell you something, folks. I have a community called Strasburg, Colorado. The main street of Strasburg, Colorado, is the dividing line between two counties. To the north, Adams. To the south, Arapahoe. And I got up here and I begged this chamber to not pass a fireworks ban because of what it's going to do to my community. Guess what you can do today? You can walk to the north side of Colfax Avenue in Strasburg and buy fireworks, and you can walk to the south side of Colfax Avenue, get in your car, and you've already taken an innocent citizen who has broken the law. Because Arapahoe County went right out and did what they did best. Put on a fireworks ban countywide. Now you tell me that doesn't create confusion for your constituents? And now you want to take our gun laws, which we as a state should be setting the policy on gun laws, and you want to create the same scenario. And if I have two split communities that I can, and I probably have more, in my district, I guarantee you there's many, many more throughout this state that you're not taking into consideration. So folks, let's not do this again. Let's not go out and create a bad law that is going to create more hardship on our constituents. Let's be consistent. I ask for a no vote on this bill. Thank you for your time, and please, thank you for your consideration.
Representative Luck.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Luck, you do have 2 minutes and 25 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I hope that this morning thus far has conveyed to you the sentiment of many of our constituents. It is no lie to say that we are receiving a host of communications from our constituents who wanted us to stand strong against this bill. We continue to stand strong against this bill. As such, I move to lay over this bill until July 12th, 2023. Thank you.
Members, that is a proper motion. The motion before us is to lay the bill over until July 12th. Representative Bottoms.
I'd like to speak in favor of this motion and to try to help advance this motion. Again, coming back to the subject of our constituents, everybody, I have not mentioned this yet, but everybody else has mentioned the fact that there are many of our constituents, stakeholders, all kinds of people that are not even my constituents, that are from other districts and some of your districts that have given me their extreme concern here that we did not do this properly, we did not do this constitutionally, we did not do this legally, we did not do this properly. And since I was the one that was in the well with my hand raised, I'm getting all of the emails about this. And so we're going to revisit this again. And I do support this motion. This needs to be laid over so that we can allow more discussion, more debate, and more understanding. I've even come to know that some of our stakeholders out there were sending us emails and all kinds of information that I didn't get. And so I want to be able to have the opportunity to get those for different reasons and be able to discuss this and discuss this at length. Again, I know this seems like if you don't like guns, you see this as we want to take everybody's guns. And most everybody is seeing that as this is the first step of taking everybody's guns. Well, that's not legal. That's not the Second Amendment. But I think the bigger issue is not just being able to take people's guns. I think that's a fear, which I understand that fear to some level, But that's a fear that is being pushed to say that people discharging a firearm on their own private property in a very well intentionally developed area to be able to discharge that firearm, that somehow that's infringing upon somebody else's rights. It's not. It never has been, and it never will be. They have the right to do this. They have the personal right, and they have the Second Amendment right. And so we want to stand for the rights of people. We want to stand for the freedom of people, freedoms that they have been experiencing and living within for a couple centuries plus. These are not new rights that we create all the time. These are not new rights that you have a right to this or you have a right to this. And some of this stuff is sheer lunacy. This one is not a new right. This one is one that goes back to the beginning of our country, that you have the right to do this.
Representative Bottoms, please be sure to draw this back to the motion before us. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. That we have the right to shoot our own firearms on our own property. That's why we have to bring this, we have to lay this over. It literally makes no sense that we had all of these amendments that we were going to be doing and that just got cut off. Again, I'm not impugning anybody's motives here. I'm not saying that somebody cut me off on purpose. That is not even close to what I'm saying. I've had those discussions. I do know that the result was we didn't get our amendments. The conversation was cut off. Intentional or not, the conversation was cut off. And so we have to bring this back. This is the basics of understanding law and understanding what our job in this building is and what understanding due process is. That we are here to debate this out and discuss this out. And that was immaturely cut short. So we have to bring this back. And we have to lay this over so that we can discuss this again, so we can figure out, and maybe one of the things that we figure out during that time frame until that date in July is we figure out how to actually handle this particular bill, HB 231165, that we figure out how to handle this the right way the next time. We're not changing anything. We're not trying to pick on anybody or impugn anybody, but it wasn't handled properly, and we want to give everybody in this chamber an opportunity to handle it properly. This is a great this is a great opportunity for Democrats and Republicans both to say, you know what, we really, really messed up, and all of the public saw it, and they are very concerned about our process. They're very concerned about whether or not a representative duly elected by the people has the right to continue talking, has the right to continue to discuss this. Because that didn't happen. We all know that. It's on video. And so we want to also make sure that all those people out there watching on video say, well, at least they're trying to fix it. You can still vote all the ways that you want to vote, that you're intending to vote. Nobody's changing that. Nobody's taking away the right. What we're doing is we're saying it was handled horribly improperly. And I even had people showing me how we can sue over this, how this is actually a lawsuit eligible issue. And we don't want that. I don't think 99% of us here want that. But that is a legitimate thing that we have to consider here. And so why don't we do the procedural right thing, lay this over to the date, give this House the opportunity to do this correct the next time, make sure that there's all the procedures and policies and the law that is followed in the process, and then the people out there that voted for you, voted for me, they have the opportunity to say, they at least tried. Maybe it didn't turn out the way I wanted, but they at least tried to fix a pretty egregious error that happened within this House. And so I am speaking to this motion, and I do believe that this motion, to me, it's a common sense kind of thing. We do need to try to get this right, so let's lay this motion over until we can legally get this done properly. And that way we're not having conversations with lawyers, and we're not trying to do all that kind of stuff. That stuff seems like a last resort if we didn't do something like this. It would seem like that to me. So we don't want that. So let's lay this over, try to figure this out so that we can get this done properly. So I do speak in favor of this motion to lay this over until the date that was specified.
Representative Armagost.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to echo and also encourage support for this motion. And the same thing that I brought up before, as my fellow Northern Colorado Representative Evans mentioned, we both have similar backgrounds, law enforcement, longtime firearms instructors. I teach hunter education through Colorado Parks and Wildlife. Having that opportunity, I have a youth shooting program where they're able to come out on group hunts. We can't afford to put youth through guided hunts. That's thousands of dollars. We have to use rural property. To restrict that on a county level, which can be just as partisan as this room is shameful for us to be able to push that power over a community that can be just as equally divided. And take that power away from those residents is not okay. I'm in strong opposition of that. But I am in support of this, laying this over, simply because of the doublespeak and the words that we all hear every day. I know I hear it every time I'm in committee. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. That is not a one-way street. That is something that we need to honor for every one of our constituents. Lifestyles, every walk of life, the diversity that's out there. We have to appreciate all of those people that we're not as familiar with as we have been in our own walk of life, in our own path that we've taken or that we've been given. We have to appreciate that for all of our constituents. Again, not just for the ones that mark your letter on their ballot, every constituent within your district. You have to honor them. That is what we came up here and swore to do. Every one of us. I was in the room with you. So please honor that. Please honor your constituents. And please lay this over so we can bring those voices to the table, have a little bit wider perspective, open our horizons a little bit just to focus on all of our constituents. This doesn't need to be a party line, partisan thing. This is something that we can bring back to the table with more discussion and simply honor everyone that we represent. Thank you.
Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to echo the need to lay this over until, so we can discuss it more fully. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. Ladies and gentlemen, our just powers were instilled in us to secure these rights. These rights are spoken to by the Second Amendment. Every single legislator in this body not only took an oath to support the Constitution, every single legislator in this room took an oath and told the citizens of Colorado that they would support the Second Amendment, that they would support every aspect of the Second Amendment. Normally, if you have a problem with an issue with part of your charter, you would take a what's called a scruple. And there's been no scruples taken. So we have everyone in this legislature, everyone in this body has taken an oath and told the citizens of Colorado specifically, they said to the citizens of Colorado, I will support your Second Amendment. Not supporting the Second Amendment is to turn and say, I lied to you.
Representative DeGraff.
Yes, ma'am. I will move on.
This is your final warning. Do
I
not
understand.
impugn the motives of the members of this body.
Madam Speaker, I understand, but there is an issue.
You may speak to the motion before us,
Okay.
which is to lay over the House Bill 1165 until July 12th.
Madam Speaker, I support that motion. We can look at history as a warning from our future, or we can condemn ourselves to repeat it. We can either learn from history or we can relive it. Our constituents, your constituents, have implored you to reconsider and I implore you to remember that you represent all Coloradans and to work within the framework of our Constitution. Do we have violence problems that we should address? Absolutely. Should they be in violation of the Constitution? Absolutely not. My colleague noted vigorous debate in the committee, by the committee, on one day, and that is all. And it was only attended by those who were aware. Our constituents that are not here trust us to support and defend the Constitution. They should not have to be here to ensure that we support and defend the Constitution. We told them that we would. My colleague cites a full conversation, but this clearly remains to be proven. The Sheriff's Association didn't weigh in, they stayed home. Well, that doesn't mean they don't have an input. That just means they didn't take a supporting or defending a role in this. But they have important questions to ask. Just because they weren't here doesn't mean they don't have information that we don't need. This was a largely one-sided conversation. We are going to consider over 700 laws. We cannot expect the citizens of Colorado to drop everything in their lives and come out and, one, be aware of, and then drop everything in their lives to be able to tell us that they would like us to support the Constitution and their rights in accordance with it. This is an issue that needs fully vetting, not an afternoon. Again, the Second Amendment is incredibly important because while we are created equal, we are not created equally capable. The imbalance of force that is created when you restrict the Second Amendment. We had people here the other day from Club Q. That could have easily been prevented. Fortunately, there was somebody that was large enough to overcome that, overcome that imbalance of force. But lacking that imbalance of force, lacking the ability to overcome that imbalance of force, that massacre would have been much more significant. And that can't be neglected. The Second Amendment protects you against an imbalance of force. It protects your rights, all of your constitutional rights that we took an oath to secure for the citizens of our state. I rise in support of laying this over so we can have a legitimate conversation about 1165.
Representative McCormick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to remind the members and the thousands watching online that this bill was heard in committee, as every other bill that comes through this body gets to be heard. It was also heard on seconds here on the floor. We had a robust conversation. It was brought back for a second time for a second reading on the floor. We participated in good faith throughout the process, and this bill needs to move forward through the process as every other bill has. We urge a no vote on this motion.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is to lay House Bill 1165 over until July 12th, 2023. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 20 aye, 43 no, and 2 excused, the motion is lost. Members, the motion before us is the adoption of House Bill 1165 on third reading and final passage. Representative Bottoms.
I would like to encourage a no vote on this bill and to remind the millions of people watching at home that we didn't deliberate properly. That is on video. It did come to the floor, as is legal, and we tried to deliberate, but very early into our deliberation process, the deliberation was improperly cut short. That is not deliberating properly. So we want to remind all the voters at home that we're trying to do that. We're trying to reset that and do that right now a little bit to get some of our voices heard. Now, we can't run any of our amendments because that was taken away from us. That was improperly taken away from us. We can't spend the time that we need to vet some of these conversations for all you millions of voters at home because we were cut short on that. We could not bring those amendments, which is the process that this body is supposed to go through, and we were not allowed to do that. It was cut short. I would also like to remind the billions of voters at home that this is the Second Amendment we're addressing. This is the right of every single person that's been established in the Constitution that they have this right. It is a right from the beginning. You can't take this away. You might temporarily try to take it away on this floor, but you cannot take this right away. The courts will not allow this to happen. And so we are trying to say beforehand, before something goes through this House and looks very bad and then goes to the Supreme Court, we are trying to say, don't do this. This is not a legitimate law. It is not a legitimate bill. It is an illegal bill. It is an inappropriate bill. And this needs to be addressed here on that wall in just a few minutes when we decide to vote on this. This bill cannot go through for the sake of the Second Amendment, for the sake of the Constitution and the state constitution. This is not allowed to happen, and that's why I'm speaking against this. I'm trying to help every person in this House to do the legal thing and the right thing in this process. And so I strongly, strongly stand against HB 23-1165.
Representative Winter.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate it. I also stand in opposition to this bill, and to all the people that are out there watching, just know that we're standing for your constitutional rights, and in the famous words of Captain John Paul Jones, I have not yet begun to fight. Thank you.
Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is a privilege to serve with you, and I will try not to run afoul of the rules.
Thank you.
Certainly welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, I strongly oppose 1165. I think we all know in this room that this is a violation of our Second Amendment. It leads to a violation of our Second Amendment. Just because this body can, doesn't mean it should. This process, calling it a deliberative process that it was heard by a committee on one day, is also indicative of a larger problem of this body. During my campaign, I always thought it was entertaining when I would ask somebody and say, hey, we meet for 120 days per year. How many laws do you think we could consider? How many laws do you think we could pass? How many laws, how many individual things do you think that we could do as a deliberative body that are going to affect Colorado for the rest of history? How many do you think? Usually the answer is maybe 10, 20, high end is 50. And when you tell them that we'll consider 500 laws, and that's what I thought. I thought it was 500 laws, but then last year when we passed something like 700 laws, this is not a deliberative process. A committee is not a deliberative process. This body is where these things should be debated. This body, we should have rigorous debate of every single law, not rubber stamping what a committee sent out. That's absurd. We need to have these discussions as a body. The entirety of Colorado was not represented in that committee. Your constituents were likely not represented in that committee. Every single Colorado voice matters. Every single Colorado citizen is sovereign over the government. It is not the duty of this government to impose laws that violate the consent of the governed. Our job is to secure the rights of the people. One of those rights is the Second Amendment. Our job is to secure the right of the Second Amendment. Do we want to make streets safer? Absolutely. Does this law do it? Absolutely not. Does absolutely nothing for it. It's a complaint about noise from people who moved out to an area that they should have known there would be noise. It's a complaint. It doesn't just override the sovereignty of the individual citizen, it overrides the sovereignty of individual governments. And we need to remember that the individual citizen is what is sovereign, not us. They don't work for us. We work for them. We don't lead them. We represent them. And we should be representing them in a way that they would represent themselves. And they asked us to come here and represent the Constitution of the United States. They did not ask us to come and lead them to some nirvana where they are taken care of, where they are coddled, where they are nurtured. They asked us to come here and stand for their rights, to secure their rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that was predicated, if you look at history, and that's predicated on property, and we've already established that this law violates two of those principles. Intentionally violates two of those principles. Are the intentions good? Sure, the intentions are great. We know from history that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. We need to vet these laws thoroughly. A committee is not a vetting. A committee is an introduction. A committee is an introduction to see, hey, is this worth vetting? And then the debate needs to happen. Not a rubber stamp of these, not a rubber stamp. For the sake of Colorado, for the sake of our state constitution, for the sake of our national constitution, for the sake of the sovereignty of our citizens, which this law violates, I ask that we vote no on 1165.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I ask for a no vote on the 1165 also. Should we be putting forth a law that is really for only 2 counties out of 64? In fact, not even really for 2 counties, for one subdivision in 1 county. The majority of the witnesses were from 1 subdivision. And yes, their complaint was noise. There are already noise ordinances. Their complaint wasn't anybody getting hurt. Their complaint didn't have any to do with any laws that were broken that were being enforced. Their complaint was of convenience. It is not appropriate for us as a legislator to pass a bill based on 1 subdivision. We have not seen any other of the 64 counties, we have not seen anybody else come out and speak on this bill. So I ask you, please, vote no on this bill.
Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you to my colleagues for listening today. Robust discussion that comes from so many parts of Colorado and so many districts and so many people. I greatly appreciate your attention and your time. There are two things that are concerning that you must consider: the infringement on private property rights and the infringement on the Second Amendment. I do feel there is some constitutional questions here, but those particular questions will be addressed outside of the chambers that we debate in. But thank you very much for your attention today and your time.
Representative Amabile.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's been a long day, and I have gotten a lot of people from the several counties that I represent who really want this bill, who support this bill. I urge a yes vote. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is the adoption of House Bill 1165 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 36 aye, 27 no, and 2 excused, House Bill 1165 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to Senate Bill 112.
Senate Bill 112 by Senator Zenzinger, also Representative Byrd, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Agriculture.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 112 on third reading and final passage.
Members, the motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 112 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative DeGraff, that's a $5 fine. Members, we will be on third readings. I would ask you to remain in the chamber. Please close the machine. With 55 aye, 8 no, and 2 excused, Senate Bill 112 is adopted. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title. Oh, co-sponsors. Getting excited. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to Senate Bill 114.
Senate Bill 114 by Senator Zenzinger, also Representative Byrd, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Early Childhood.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 114 on third reading and final passage.
Members, you've heard the motion. The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 114 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Gonzalez Gutierrez. Please close the machine. With 48 aye, 15 no, and 2 excused, Senate Bill 114 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 115.
Senate Bill 115 by Senator Zenzinger, also Representative Byrd, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Education.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 115, third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 115 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 48 aye, 15 no, and 2 excused, Senate Bill 115 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to Senate Bill 116.
Senate Bill 116 by Senator Zenzinger, also Representative Byrd, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the offices of the Governor, Lieutenant Governor, and State Planning and Budgeting.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 116 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 116 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 45 aye, 18 no, and 2 excused, Senate Bill 116 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to Senate Bill 117.
Senate Bill 117 by Senator Zenzinger, also Representative Byrd, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Healthcare Policy and Financing.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 117 on third reading, final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 117 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 47 ayes, 16 no, and 2 excused, Senate Bill 117 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to Senate Bill 118.
Senate Bill 118 by Senator Zenzinger, also Representative Byrd, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Higher Education.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 118 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 118 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 46 ayes, 17 no, and 2 excused, Senate Bill 118 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 119.
Senate Bill 119 by Senator Zenzinger, also Representative Byrd, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Human Services.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 119 on third reading, final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 119 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 49 aye, 14 no, and 2 excused, Senate Bill 119 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 120.
Senate Bill 120 by Senator Zenzinger, also Representative Byrd, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Judicial Department.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 120 on third reading and final passage.
Members, the motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 120 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 46 ayes, 17 no, and 2 excused, Senate Bill 120 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 121.
Senate Bill 121 by Senator Zenzinger, also Representative Byrd, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Labor and Employment.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 121 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 121 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 49 aye, 14 no, and 2 excused, Senate Bill 121 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 122.
Senate Bill 122 by Senator Zenzinger, also Representative Byrd, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Law.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 122 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 122 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 46 ayes, 17 no, 2 excused, Senate Bill 122 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 123.
Senate Bill 123 by Senator Zenzinger, also Representative Byrd, concerning supplemental appropriation to the Department of Legislature.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 123 on third reading, final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 123 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 55 aye, 8 no, and 2 excused, Senate Bill 123 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 124.
Senate Bill 124 by Senator Zenzinger, also Representative Byrd, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Local Affairs.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 124 on third reading, final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 124 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 46 ayes, 17 no, and 2 excused, Senate Bill 124 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to Senate Bill 125.
Senate Bill 125 by Senator Zenzinger, also Representative Byrd, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 125 on third reading, final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 125 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 64 aye and 1 excused, 0 no and 1 excused, Senate Bill 125 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to Senate Bill 126.
Senate Bill 126 by Senator Zenzinger, also Representative Byrd, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Natural Resources.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 126 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 126 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 48 ayes, 16 no, and 1 excused, Senate Bill 126 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 127.
Senate Bill 127 by Senator Zenzinger, also Representative Byrd, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Personnel.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 127 on third reading, final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 127 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representatives Doherty and Kipp. Please close the machine. With 46 aye, 18 no, and 1 excused, Senate Bill 127 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 128.
Senate Bill 128 by Senator Zenzinger, also Representative Byrd, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Public Health and Environment.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 128 on third reading, final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 128 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 46 aye, 18 no, and 1 excused, Senate Bill 128 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 129.
Senate Bill 129 by Senator Zenzinger, also Representative Byrd, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Public Safety.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 129 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 129 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 54 aye, 10 no, and 1 excused, Senate Bill 129 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 130.
Senate Bill 130 by Senator Zenzinger, also Representative Byrd, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Regulatory Agencies.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 130 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 130 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 46 aye, 18 no, and 1 excused, Senate Bill 130 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 131.
Senate Bill 131 by Senator Zenzinger, also Representative Byrd, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Revenue.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 131 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 131 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 49 aye, 15 no, and 1 excused, Senate Bill 131 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 132.
Senate Bill 132 by Senator Zenzinger, also Representative Byrd, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of State.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 132 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 132 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 49 aye, 15 no, and 1 excused, Senate Bill 132 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 133.
Senate Bill 133 by Senator Zenzinger, also Representative Byrd, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Transportation.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 133 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 133 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 55 aye, 9 no, and 1 excused, Senate Bill 133 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, if you're not too tired, please read the title of Senate Bill 134.
Senate Bill 134 by Senator Zenzinger, also Representative Byrd, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of the Treasury.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 134 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 134 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 46 aye, 18 no, and 1 excuse, Senate Bill 134 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 135.
Senate Bill 135 by Senator Zenzinger, also Representative Byrd, concerning funding for capital construction and making supplemental appropriations in connection therewith.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 135 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 135 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 53 aye, 11 no, 1 excused, Senate Bill 135 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to Senate Bill 136.
Senate Bill 136 by Senators Zenzinger and Kirkmeyer, also Representatives Sirota and Bockenfeld, concerning adjustments to school funding for the 2022-23 budget year and in connection therewith reducing an appropriation.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 136 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 136 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 56 aye, 8 no, and 1 excuse, Senate Bill 136 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 137.
Senate Bill 137 by Senators Bridges and Kirkmeyer, also Representatives Burden, Bockenfeld, concerning the transfer of money from the general fund to the Colorado Economic Development Fund.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 137 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 137 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 53 aye, 11 no, and 1 excuse, Senate Bill 137 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 138.
Senate Bill 138 by Senators Zenzinger and Kirkmeyer, also Representatives Burden, Sirota, concerning authorizing the Department of Healthcare Policy and Financing to distribute money to the Denver Health and Hospital Authority and in connection therewith making an appropriation.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 138 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 138 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 58 aye, 6 no, and 1 excuse, Senate Bill 138 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to Senate Bill 139.
Senate Bill 139 by Senators Zenzinger and Kirkmeyer, also Representatives Sirota and Bockenfeld, concerning the appropriation of money from the Severance Tax Operational Fund of the Wildfire Mitigation Capacity Development Fund and in connection therewith making an appropriation.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 139 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 139 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 64 aye, 0 no, and 1 excused, Senate Bill 139 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to Senate Bill 140.
Senate Bill 140 by Senators Zenzinger and Kirkmeyer, also Representatives Byrd and Bockenfeld, concerning extending the contract deadline for the independent study of House Bill 221326 and in connection therewith, extending a related existing appropriation.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 140 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 140 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 52 aye, 12 no, and 1 excuse, Senate Bill 140 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 141.
Senate Bill 141 by Senators Bridges and Kirkmeyer, also Representatives Byrd and Bockenfeld, concerning transfers from the General Fund for Capital Construction.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 141 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 141 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 55 aye, 9 no, and 1 excuse, Senate Bill 141 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to Senate Bill 142.
Senate Bill 142 by Senators Bridges and Zenzinger, also Representatives Sirota and Bockenfeld, concerning the information technology capital appropriation process for information technology projects submitted to the General Assembly by certain state entities.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 142 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 142 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 52 aye, 12 no, and 1 excuse, Senate Bill 142 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to Senate Bill 113.
Senate Bill 113 by Senator Zenzinger, also Representative Byrd, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Corrections.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 113 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 113 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 40 aye, 24 no, and 1 excuse, Senate Bill 113 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Members, any further announcements or introductions? Representative Weissman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to ask for a few minutes of personal privilege pursuant to Rule 22A.
The personal privilege is granted.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I wanted to read just a few words here, and then I wanted to say why I'm reading the words. House Rule 23 is captioned decorum, and 23D says simply this: when speaking or debating before the House, a member shall confine his or her remarks to the question under discussion or debate, avoiding personalities. That's it. That's in this book that we all got a copy of. That's the way that this principle is set forth in our rules. I also went digging this morning in Mason's Manual, which is, I don't know, sort of this reference book for legislative nerds that we keep back here. Copied out the relevant pages. The point is, it's not just us. Mason's compiles from the rules of other states, from cases, from treatises, some of which are older than this country. I think the point of this is that what we do here, the laws we pass, what we put on the red books, is what matters most. But how we do what we do also matters a great deal. And now we'll turn to why. I think that we are all formed by the ways that we grew up, the places that we grow up. Some members know, I'm coming on 20 years in Colorado now, but when I was younger, I lived in the northeast part of the United States. As it happens, very near some places where our founding happened, near some of the significant sites of our founding era and our Revolutionary War. I grew up 20 minutes from a place called Washington's headquarters, which was exactly that. It's now a National Park Service site. General Washington spent the winter of '78, I think it was, there. 20 minutes in another direction was a place called Jockey Hollow, also now on the National Park Service register. The Continental Army spent a really brutal, hard winter there in, I think, '79, '80. Then I get to be a little bit older, and I'm going to college in the Boston area. And ride my bike by, I'm hanging out by, I'm visiting friends by Old South Church, by Faneuil Hall. I walked up and I touched the wall of Paul Revere's house that dates to 1630 once. I used to ride my bike through Concord. Yeah, that Concord, Massachusetts. So all this rattles around my head when I come in here in the morning and when I think about what we're here to do and what it means to even be here and who we are and how we should be when we're here. To me, this is not just another thing that we do. It is not just like the last job that we had or the next job that we're going to have. When we are here, when we are engaging in debate, when we are pursuing rational self-governance, which is what the founding was about, which is what all the Enlightenment philosophers were trying to be about, imperfect though they were. When we are here, doing what we do, debating what we debate, we are aspiring, or at least we should aspire, to step into those shoes, to inherit and do right by the legacy of separating ourselves from monarchy, to try to step into what was right about all of that Enlightenment era philosophy and to correct what was wrong and exclusionary about it. When we have a robust debate, even if it doesn't substantively go the way that I want, when we have a really rich debate in here, I feel a particular kind of pride and satisfaction that we have honored that legacy, that we stand in here. And when things get a little bit rough, and I believe that they did today, when we veer a little bit from the likes of Rule 23D, it saddens me, because I believe that we should all strive to measure up to that legacy that we inherit. when we are here. Thank you.
Additional announcements and introductions. Representative Ortiz.
I am excused by, or given permission from the Majority Leader to be excused tomorrow morning.
So approved. I have an announcement. Representative Doherty will sub for Rep. Morrow on business and labor for today only. Representative Frizzell.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have been given permission by the Majority Leader and the Minority Leader to be absent beginning at noon tomorrow.
So approved. Representative McCormick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just a reminder that Agriculture, Water, and Natural Resources Committee will meet, let's say, 15 minutes from now at 12:25 downstairs. Thanks.
Thank you. Representative Martinez and Representative Winter.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's an honor to serve with you.
And an honor to serve with you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
We just wanted to inform you, unfortunately, our guests from Leadership Pueblo have left already, but we wanted to, give them, or if you see them around the hall this afternoon, please thank them for the wonderful chips and Pueblo chili salsa that you have on your desk today. We hope that you enjoyed them not only today, but for the rest of the year. So come on down to Pueblo.
We'd like to thank them all.
Representative
and-
Winter.
Sorry, Madam Speaker. We'd like to thank them all, and we'd also like to state Pueblo chili, Colorado chili is way better than New Mexico chili.
Ooh, delicious. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to lay over the balance of the calendar until tomorrow.
Seeing no objection, the balance of the calendar will be laid over until tomorrow, Friday, February 16th? 17th. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the House stand in recess until later today.
Seeing no objection, the House will stand in recess until later today.